Welcome back. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Griha. India has withdrawn its 8-athlete wushu or martial arts contingent from the Summer World University Games that are happening in Chengdu after China issued stapled visas to 3 athletes from the team who belong to Arunachal Pradesh. Now, a stapled visa is simply an unstamped piece of paper that is attached by a pin or staples to a page of the passport and can be torn off or detached at will. This, of course, is different from a regular visa that is affixed to the passport by the issuing authority and then stamped. Now, China has been doing it for a while now when granting visas to Indian nationals from both the state of Arunachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir. So why does China do it? Now, it is because China disputes India's unequivocal and internationally accepted sovereignty over Arunachal Pradesh. It challenges the legal status of the McMahon Line, or the boundary between Tibet and British India that was agreed at the meet between Great Britain, China and Tibet at the Simla Convention in the year 1940. It is this disagreement essentially that lies at the heart of the Chinese claim over the position of the line of the actual control and its repeated transgressions into the Indian territory. Remember, this latest incident is also close to the heels of the Prime Minister Modi meeting his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping in Bali last year, which the Chinese in fact go on to claim had the leaders discussing about the border standoff, something that has not been backed by India.
वीजा ही नहीं दिया था।
3 लोगों पे ही ऑब्जेक्शन लिया जो अरुणाचल प्रदेश से।
ये 3 लोग ही है सर, जो अरुणाचल प्रदेश के हमारे बच्चे हैं, तीनों बच्चे। हमारे ये 5 प्लेयर जिन्होंने बहुत मेहनत की है, मेडल लेके आए, हम चाहते हैं कि ये लोग तो जाए।
We are from Arunachal. 3 people are from Arunachal Pradesh, so we apply our visa for our World University Games, but we got stapled visa. We were hoping that we will get visa, but fortunately we couldn't get our visa.
This is unacceptable, and we have lodged our strong protest with the Chinese side, reiterating our consistent position on the matter.
Prime Minister Modi has softened the stand with China. Therefore, only we are in a backup wicket. Now they can give Chepul Vishwa to our Arunachal friends. Arunachal is part of India, and the government should be very strong in dealing with Chinese on this thing.
Let's first begin by getting you an overview of China's position on Arunachal Pradesh and its campaign when it comes to the state of Arunachal Pradesh. Now, China has, of course, disputed the sovereignty that India has over Arunachal Pradesh, and that's the key point that we are looking at as China, in fact, goes on to claim that 90,000 square kilometers of Arunachal Pradesh is, in fact, Chinese territory. That is the claim that China has made. It also goes on to challenge the legal status of the McMahon Line, like I just mentioned. Further, China has called the area Zhangyan with reference to South Tibet. That is also an important aspect. Now, this is the state-run Chinese media that has been beginning to do this since the year 2005. In fact, the Chinese signaled their intention by refusing to give a visa to an Indian government official who was serving in Arunachal Pradesh in the late 2006, and that's when it all started. The Chinese maps also show Arunachal Pradesh as part of China. That's another major and a grave problem. If we go further, China has repeatedly issued Chinese names for places inside the territory, the Indian territory, and inside Arunachal Pradesh. In 2011, in fact, if we go further and take a look at what happened when this stapled visa issue really started from 2006 onwards, this is not a new tactic. And despite the fact that Indian government's position has been that there should be no discrimination against the visa applicants of Indian nationality on grounds of domicile and ethnicity, and this has been clearly conveyed to the Chinese government on several occasions, yes, yet these instances continue to happen. So we go back to 2011, where 5 karate athletes from Arunachal Pradesh were issued staple visa. That was instance number 1. Then later in 2013, 2 archers from Arunachal Pradesh were again issued staple visa. And later, if we take a look at 2016, the manager of the badminton team from Arunachal was in fact denied the visa altogether. So all of these instances have been happening, and this latest one has been another instance which has led the authorities to take a very, very tough stance against China and decide that the entire Indian contingent will keep away from that competition. Let me now open this up to my guests who are on the broadcast. Wing Commander Abhishek Mathiman, who's a former spokesperson of the Ministry of Defence, is with us, and also with us is Andrew KP Long, who's a Chinese expert, and last but not the least, security analyst Mr. Pathikrit Payne also joins us. Wing Commander Mathiman, I first would want to begin with you, because I just listed out these various instances, something that has been repeatedly happening from the Chinese side of granting staple visas to either athletes or people from Arunachal Pradesh. And this has been continuing since the year 2006. The stance that we are seeing the Indian government take at the moment when it comes to withdrawing this entire Indian contingent from the tournament altogether, how do you see it?
See, of late, last couple of decades or so, looking at the way the Chinese have tried and actually propelled themselves to a position of power, it's now globally known that Chinese policy is essentially domination through belligerence. Now, unfortunately for us, we share our largest land border with them, which had been arrived upon when the Britishers were ruling India, and is popularly known as the Macron Line. There have been disputes not only in Arunachal Pradesh. There's been dispute over Eastern Ladakh, Aksai Chin, and other parts too.
Yes.
So what has happened is we see the stapled visa per se isn't something great, but what needs to be understood in the context is when the stakes are very high, be it political or on the economic front or militarily, when the stakes are high, you need to tread a cautious path. That is the main impediment in the as far as India is concerned. For that matter, other nations too. Be it defiance of freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, or grabbing of island territories in its neighboring small nations, or the ongoing problem and a standoff, military standoff with India. It's globally known and people recognize. It's only a matter of time when actually they pay for what they do. Having said that, this particular thing of giving stapled visa essentially means what they actually do is they, instead of pasting the visa on the passports of these Arunachali citizens who belong to the sovereign nation of India, what they do is they clip it up with the passport and stamp it there. So it is actually only a pressure tactic to show that they don't consider Arunachal Pradesh as a part of sovereign Indian territory.
Absolutely, and that is what the key point is, Wing Commander Mathiman, because you know that is what the bone of contention has been, and ever since 2006 it's been continuing. Like I also presented a series of graphic pointers and also the aspects of when all the Arunachali athletes were denied a normal visa and they were given the staple visa. One instance also claims that one particular coach was denied a visa from the Chinese authorities altogether. But the points that you were making, let me actually bring in Mr. Long here, who's also with us from China. Mr. Long, you know, there was a statement that was released by the Chinese Foreign Ministry over the Indian Prime Minister and his Chinese counterparts' visit in Bali, how they had exchanged dialogues and deliberations upon what the India-China border standoff is at its moment right now and what needs to be done when it is about bettering the situation. That was the claim that was made by the Chinese authorities. That sort of a communique hasn't really been backed by India. After having put that out, then you go ahead and still continue with this trend that you've started in 2006 by giving stapled visas to athletes or people from Arunachal Pradesh, essentially saying that you don't recognize Arunachal Pradesh as has been internationally recognized to be a part of India. How does one see this move back home here in the country?
Well, the disputes over that territory has had a long history. It all dates back to India, pre-independence India, at the time of when the British Empire caused arbitrarily divided the territory in that area into India and Pakistan, and also part of the territory which used to belong to mainland China. And China has been very consistent in maintaining its claimed national sovereignty over that area. As you rightly pointed out at the beginning of this program, this is not the first time when stamped visas are issued. And so China is unlikely to back down on that. And of course, territorial disputes are the major thing that's standing between India and China, because there are lots of areas where the two countries need to cooperate on one another as regards the third world, as regards to climate change and all that. But territorial disputes are now seem to be tearing these two countries apart, which is quite a pity. But as far as these Arunachal Pradesh is concerned, China has been very consistent and cannot be seen to be backed down. And that's what's happening. And I think that this is a new normal.
Okay. All right, Patikrit, our member from the Chinese side really goes on to say this is the new normal. And the Indian side has been seeing this, like I repeatedly am pointing out, since the year 2006. When is that time that we draw that line, that any kind of artistic or even sports exchanges stop? If at all there is this new normal, that the recognition of Arunachal Pradesh as being part of India is going to be questioned time and again by the Chinese. How do you see the relations really prospering when it is about India and China? This is going to continue.
Look, the dichotomy we have for China is that they're trying to push this narrative that okay, we can do whatever we want in the borders, but let's have other businesses as usual. I think India has called off that bluff. So this time the contingent is not going, which is a very welcome step on part of government of India. See the desperation at the same time on the part of the Chinese to invest in the Indian market. There's a company called BIDE which wanted to invest $1 billion in the electric vehicle category in India. Government of India said no. So the problem with China is this, that they have border with 12 to 13 countries and they have territorial disputes with more than 20 countries. So the whole belligerence they do, first of all, most of the borders, we have, these issues that they're talking about. We have a border with Tibet, which was not part of China before 1949. Let's be very clear about it. So the five fingers of Tibet policy that Mao Zedong brought in after annexation of Tibet, that the issue of problems they're creating are as part of the five fingers of Tibet policy, under which they are creating problem in Ladakh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sikkim and Arunachal Pradesh. So, where the issue is from 2020 onwards, when the Galwan issue they started, they presumed that the COVID and everything else that would follow, India will wither away. It did not happen that way. India emerged in spite of several challenges that we had and we still have. We have emerged as the fifth largest economy of the world. So perhaps we are the only country whom they could not pin down with all their threats and psychological warfare. So yes, it's business as usual. There are areas of convergence with China. They would have on BRICS, there are collaborations. But when it comes to issues like this, India would call the bluff and we will not go anywhere where they, issue these staple visas. We will not go. So the government has withdrawn the contingent for this game. So Chinese concept is this: let us, do these transgressions in the borders with India, but let's have business with India at the same time. Please understand, the Chinese, with due respect, must understand these two countries have to stay together. You have a huge balance of, export surplus with us, the amount of export you do to India. So you have to respect the Indian market as well. It cannot be that for the sake of business, you will have Indian market and at the same time for everything else, you will try to pin us down. This India has changed and this is not going to accept them. This is not going to be acceptable in near future. So I think, Griha, we have taken a right step in terms of withdrawing. And I think you will have more clear steps taken in the forward. Business-wise, not allowing buys for this electric vehicle investment is a great thing. We are showing to the world we are not desperate for investments. If you want to invest in the Indian economy, you must respect the Indian sovereignty. Talks are going on. Still, they want to have the staple visas. They can issue staple visas if they want. We will do what we find it good to do, whether it's on the economic
this point
front or it's
that
about
Pathikrit is making, Wing Commander Matiman, I'd need your inputs on this. Do you think, and if the question is on the Indian authorities, do you think the Indian authorities are completely ready to have that blanket ban on China, whether it is vis-a-vis business or whether with this vis-a-vis the sporting activities? And while you answer that, I'd like to also understand what happens to the sportspersons, because in this case, this entire Indian contingent was preparing for this tournament for the last 2 years. What happens to the morale of the sports people? Because this stance, the toughening of stance, needed to have been done before. Why allow the Indian athletes to go to China? And, if you are toughening your stance, why wait for each and every occasion for the Chinese to go ahead and issue stapled visas and then this sort of a response by the Indian side?
See, Griya, essentially what we need to do is, when it comes to China, we need to look at the broader perspective.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, the stakes are higher. So the line we tread has to be a cautious line, striking a balance. We cannot, as you said, we cannot just ban things vis-a-vis China. What we need to do is, when we not give so much of importance to these little niggling activities. After all, practically, it doesn't really affect morally or politically. Of course, it's a pressure tactic. But of late, the line that the government of India has been towing, whether it be vis-a-vis Pakistan or be it China, I am glad to see that we are no more mixing things up. It is not that terrorism and cricket can go hand in hand as it used to earlier. And similarly, a border standoff and business as usual is not the thing, is a thing of the past, actually. So looking at the new India, what we need to do is, while withstanding these pressure tactics, we need to explore our strong points and explore those what we can make the best use of. What's more important is these little things which, like this, for example, the stapled visa. The only intent behind it is not to recognize Arunachal Pradesh citizens as Indian citizens.
Yes.
Our counter to that is the way actually we are dealing with it. It's going to be on the diplomatic front. We are to, in the long run, get home the message, put across the message very firmly and strongly that we are no pushovers. They might try and succeed in the belligerence with smaller nations, which they have been doing similar things, but definitely not India. India is a force to reckon with. We are looking at being the third largest economy in probably a decade hence. So we need to drive home the point, and that's precisely what we are doing, I think, just the right way.
So, Wing Commander Matiman, you're essentially saying that obviously diplomacy needs to reign supreme, and when it is about the China situation vis-a-vis India, China is certainly no Pakistan. And there needs to be a give and take that needs to happen constantly, whether it is on a business perspective or on a sporting federation. That cannot be stopped. Is that what you're saying? Because if that is the case, then these statements that have been made by the Ministry of External Affairs over this instance, these tend to be a mere lip service. And I understand that's not how diplomacy works, but when there is a toughening of stance and then there is also this measure of diplomacy that needs to be taken into account, how do we balance things?
See, we don't need to get very sentimental about how the sportspersons preparing for an event would be feeling right now at this particular juncture. What I said was, we are to look at the larger perspective and where the national interest lies. Arunachal Pradesh residents remain as much a part of India as they were before being issued stapled visas. the way ahead is this. What MEA essentially is doing is taking the diplomatic path and following SOPs as are stated, and what is in the best interest of the two nations. Because there is no, I say again, there is no direct impact of the issue of staple visas. We have expressed ourselves very clearly and curtly in having cancelled the trip that we don't accept what you try to thrust upon us. So that is the way to go. Okay. And probably wishing everyone well. China will need to relent at some point of time, because we cannot. What is right, we have to stand by it and hold our own in the long run.
Mr. Long, let me bring you in here. 227 Indians are really participating. These are athletes who are participating in 11 other sports events at the games that have been held every 2 years in China. Do you think if instances like this are going to happen, and they will of course reach the normal Indian public, there is going to be that sense of retaliation and that disgruntlement from the Indian side? So these relationships that China speaks on the basis of its relation with India, how far do you see that really going when you have constantly these hiccups that continue to arrive at?
As I said, Griha, the Chinese will have to relent. They will have to give concessions, if not for anyone else, at least for India, which I firmly believe we are not.
Mr. Andrew Long. Mr. Andrew, are you able to?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Are you asking me?
Yes, Mr. Long, please go ahead.
Well, yes. Well, China is not banning athletes from other Indian provinces. Okay. It's just this Arunachal Pradesh, which is of course has been long in dispute as far as China is concerned. And I don't think that China is likely to back down on that, as I said. But I think that there are many areas where the two countries need to cooperate with one another.
My question to you is, can these nudgings not be avoided? Can these nudgings not be avoided, sir?
Well, but the unfortunate thing is that if both sides are seeking a winner-takes-all solution, a black and white solution, I don't think that this ideal solution is anywhere near. So in the meantime, I think both sides need to build up trust and also talk around the issue rather than demanding the other side back down, and finding out whether there is other formulas which can save the position on both sides. But as I said, this kind of visa problem applies only to areas in dispute, like the Arunachal Pradesh. And of course, the cooperation on sports and other areas is most welcome, is most positive on both sides. And when both sides continue to build up areas of cooperation, then
but now the contingent is not coming, sir. So are you good with that? The Indian contingent is not coming. So are you okay with that?
Sorry?
I'm saying that the Indian contingent is not coming now. So are you okay with that stance that India has taken? Because if this is the nudging that is going to continue from the Chinese side, of course, this is the kind of retaliation that you would have to see from Indian side as well.
Well, okay. I mean, of course, territorial integrity is extremely important on both sides. And I said China is unlikely to sacrifice this important issue just for account of sports.
All right. On that note, I'd have to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, all my guests, for joining me on the broadcast. This situation, although short-lived, let's see how much of a talk does it continue to have, and that resonance really, border high on the India and China border equation that has only continued to deteriorate with every passing day. With that, it's a wrap from my side on Viewpoint. My colleague Toya is up next with Plain Speak.